Welcome back to the Colorado Prep Show presented by Upswing. I'm the editor-in-chief of Colorado Prep's Dan Mormon. With me, as always, the editor-in-chief of Mile High Sports Magazine, Doug Ottewell. Doug, we're back in our normal confines today. No studio at number 38.
No.
Got to get back there soon. It was fun. It was actually really fun the way that we had that whole show done. We've got some ideas of how we're going to utilize that studio through the course of the winter, but yeah, that's another question for another day, Doug. Before we get into the usual stuff, I just got to recap it one more time. The newest issue of Mile High Sports Magazine is still a really good read, especially with the Nuggets being as depleted as they are. And when people see Bruce Brown play a little bit more basketball, it's fun to see what Bruce Brown can also do on horseback. So a great feature in Mile High Sports Magazine from you. Good times with Bruce Brown out at the ranch. And
it must be popular because there were no bobbleheads to be found. And word on the street is even if you were early to the game, you probably missed out to the Bruce Brown bobblehead night on Friday night.
You know, Bruce is he's always been endearing to Nuggets fans. I think when he does things like go out to your ranch, kind of navigate cattle from point A to point B, it just makes him all that much more of a Colorado guy. So it's always good to see. Mile High Sports Magazine, you can find it various places around Denver. There's a map on milehighsports.com. And the feature is even published on milehighsports.com. So you can just go read at least that one there. A lot of good stuff in there. But Doug, as we start every show, we talk about what's on our upswing. I should have gone back and forth because I went first last week, but I don't want to deviate from the rundown. But we're at the point of the year, man, where it feels like every week everything is happening. And I love it because with football, we have an entire week to build up. You know, these are the big games you're looking forward to. These are the big results from last week. This is what this means going forward. But, basketball season does not get contained to just 1 or 2 days. Case in point, I texted you earlier. There's a massive slate of games this week. So much good basketball to watch. It does not matter what part of the state you're in. I highly encourage you, if you're just sitting there twiddling your thumbs waiting for the Broncos to take on the Buffalo Bills, go kill some time with some high school basketball because there is a great slate of games to watch. The marathon of winter sports this time of year, it's just so much more different than the sprint of football season. So that's what's on my upswing. And also, this isn't really an upswing; it's more of a downswing. But I was reminded this weekend again that high school parents are rough, man. And we're going to get into that later. It's actually going to be a soapbox moment. I wasn't planning on that, but I sent out a couple of tweets from an experience I had over the weekend, and it was the interaction I got was enough that I was like, yeah, let's bring it up and let's maybe educate the masses.
We'll go there.
We will go there. Your dad was the former CHSAA commissioner, so I'm curious to see what your perspective is from the son of an admin. Before I toss it off to you, Doug, the last few weeks that we've been going through this, we got into this habit that we wanted to wear school gear. I mean, we'll get into yours in a second. You can see it clearly, but for my school gear that I'm repping today, it's the Rye Thunderbolts.
Sweet.
And big props, big shout out to Rye coach Matt Addington. I went down and watched their basketball game on Wednesday. It wasn't the outcome that they wanted, but saw him, told him what we were doing. I mean, he took me right back into his office. Just gave me the pick of the litter. This is going right into the workout shirt pile. After this, it's good Under Armour fabric and the kind of stuff that I usually like to do my nonsense in. So, yeah. But beyond that, Doug, what's on your upswing?
Well, this isn't going in the workout pile. This is going in the, wash gently, low heat dry pile. This is high quality stuff here that I got from the Northfield Nighthawks. Also, my nephews go there, but they picked a winner when I asked for some Nighthawks gear. So no complaints there. Shout out to Jack and Quinn of Northfield. But yeah, my upswing, doing a little prep work on the show, and we talked about it briefly last week on the show. But Regis's Eric Fiedler's averaging 35 points a game, and as a guy who plays and played basketball my entire life, and I don't care who you are or what level you're at, 35 points in a basketball game is a lot of points. Like, you have to be a gifted scorer to be doing that. And you consider that Fiedler's doing it at the highest level of Colorado high school sports. and it makes it all that more impressive. And, I kind of went down the schedule, and he's not playing 3A teams across the board. He's playing the best of the best in 6A and still putting up those kind of numbers. So that's a kid that I can't wait to watch come Coliseum time.
Well, yeah, and that's a kid that's staying in state. He's going to go play up in Fort Collins at Colorado State. I got to see him earlier this year at Lewis Palmer. Great basketball player, fun to watch. So yeah, Collie time's going to be good. Before we dive into really the meat of the show, I mean, we have to thank our title sponsor here at the Colorado Prep Show, Upswing, located at 7460 South University Boulevard in Centennial. I'll tell you what, Dougie, that Upswing cold plunge sauna area, compression therapy, that whole thing that's designed to help young athletes develop. It's been one of those weeks where I just think of that. I've been training hard on some stationary bikes and everything, got some plans for the summer, and my legs have been feeling it this week. And whenever I think of Upswing, I think of that recovery area and how nice that would be. It's designed for, or not designed, but intended for those young athletes that are trying to do some great things and make their way to places like the Denver Coliseum. Prior to getting that recovery, Upswing is, provides them elite training, and it's a way for those kids to develop skills and habits that last for far beyond sports, for more than just sports. And when they're looking at doing something like that, they're trying to remove cost barriers. Upswing invests in the drive and talent of young athletes, and they create the opportunities for them to excel in and out of the gym, hopefully easing some of those cost barriers. Upswing scholarships are always available to interested parties. And with that, we're going to bring in our guy from Upswing, Jermaine Stafford, sitting right there. I believe he's on the turf. No, you're on the track. You're on the track with everything rolling. But Jermaine, how was the weekend, man? How's was there some football? Was there some high school viewing experience, indoor track season? What's going on?
Yeah, how you doing? How you doing, Dan, Doug? Good to see you guys. I see you wearing your gear, nice, and you have your drip going. I can see. I obviously stayed home with Upswing.
You're a good company, man.
Well, yeah. Well, I have a lot of high schools coming through the door. I don't want to fight with teams coming through the door every day, but I can tell you guys look good in your gear. Yeah, busy weekend. A lot of track and field for our Upswing athletes. It is that full indoor track and field season, and as you can see, every time I get that question, I am going to campaign and stand on my soapbox that the state of Colorado should have a high school indoor track and field season. It's definitely necessary, and we have a lot of great football athletes, and why not have indoor track in Colorado, right? It's just for youth and the different sports. So yeah, heavy and hitting. Colorado School of Mines as well up at CU. Kids were busy. No football this week. Couldn't even watch football yesterday. I'm a basketball guy. So, yeah, I was looking at the Nuggets last night. I'm in tune by the Nuggets showing everyone that, yeah, we're a good team with that big fella who's one of the best to ever play the game. But, yeah, we're a great team as well, right, without him. So just to see those guys stand up as a former athlete, and as you said, Doug, being a basketball player, I think those guys are taking that initiative to show that they play as well.
Yep. They play hard.
Yep. And speaking of hoops, guys, we're going to dive right into hoops, and we're going to switch up the order of things a little bit, because as opposed to running down things early and then getting to an interview. I remember last Tuesday, I caught a little glimpse of a score that was going on live from our buddy Matt Langley at Basketball Colorado. So I threw on my phone. I pulled up the Huddle Fan Deal and took a look at Valor Christian ThunderRidge. Valor Christian was up 2 points. I mean, seconds left, guys, just mere seconds left. And the Grizzlies are coming off a 2-point loss to Cherry Creek. Dropping 2 in a row coming out of winter break is not something any of those 6A teams want to do. So what did Grizzlies guard Sean Morton do? Well, he took matters into his own hands, sideline out of bounds, drills a shot nearly from half court, 1.4 seconds left on the clock. I mean, this was the second time they tried to run that play. The first one got knocked out of bounds, drains it, place goes nuts. Well, the ThunderRidge portion of the place goes nuts because we can see that's at Valor Christian. So reached out to him just moments after hitting that game-winning shot. And so he was kind enough to jump in with us. Sean Morton from ThunderRidge boys basketball ahead of practice, right? We're not interrupting Joe's routine, are we?
No, we don't start until 2:50. This is perfect.
Well, awesome, man. Thanks for jumping in with us. We appreciate you joining the show. I want to say, outside of the Road to State program we did for state football, I think you're only the second athlete that we've had, because sometimes we don't know if we can trust you kids, so we tend to talk to your coaches. But yeah, let's just get right into it. What is a win like that coming out of winter break? You guys are coming off a 2-point loss to Cherry Creek. What does a win like that do for you guys at this point of the year?
Yeah, like you said, we came off the 2-point loss to Cherry Creek, and we've played in a lot of close games that have come down to a couple possessions. And I think that winning one close like that and having a big moment like that really sparked us, and it helped us with our other 2 games this week. We played Overland and George Washington, and I think having a win like that sparked us there, and we won both of those. And I think it's just been really good. It's strengthened our focus in practice, and it's been good for us.
Sean, I think every kid that's ever picked up a basketball, especially if you've made it to the varsity level in high school, at some point in your life, you've done the thing in the driveway, the 3, 2, 1, you make the shot. When I was a high school basketball player, I had one buzzer beater. I was nowhere near the caliber of player that you are, but I remember it was odd because it was a play that wasn't designed to go to me. The ball kind of got loose, fumbled into my hands somehow, and I made a shot. It was almost like I was in shock. You didn't realize you just did that. But to this day, it's still one of my fondest memories. So I'm just curious, for you, what was the experience like? What did the 3, 2, 1 when you were 6 years old kind of match up to the reality of actually doing it in front of a packed gym?
Yeah, I mean, you said it. Ever since I was a little kid, that's been the thing you do. You get in the driveway and there's 3 seconds left, and you got to throw it from the furthest possible spot you can. You stand in the street and try and make it. It's something ever since I was a little kid I've always dreamed of doing. I grew up watching Steph Curry was my favorite player, so seeing him do it every game, it's like, oh my goodness. And yeah, that's the dream, to hit a half-court buzzer beater. And then, like you said, how the play wasn't designed for you. The play we called in the huddle was designed for our center, Drew, to get the ball in the wing. And Nick Q was the guy inbounding it. He was sitting next to me, and I turned over to him. I was 5 for 6 already from 3, and I told him, look, don't give Drew the ball. Give me it. I'm going to hit it. And he said, all right, I'll find you if you're open. And then when the first play didn't work, he was trying to throw it to Drew, and it got tipped out of bounds. He looked over at me and gave me a wink, and I was like, all right, here it comes. So I tried as hard as I could to get open. I ran my man off of that screen. I remember catching it and like kind of pivoting, and I turned, and there was like a second on the clock. I put it up, and it felt really good coming out of the hand. I thought it was good. I started walking back, and then when it actually went in, that's kind of when that moment of shock happened. You're like, whoa, what just happened? I remember pumping my fist twice, but then after that, it was kind of blackout, just adrenaline. It was so crazy. Yeah, it was amazing.
Hey, Sean is the only one on this panel outside of you that actually has hair. I'm going to ask you this question. Dan and Doug don't have the privilege to ask this because we see we both are curly hair guys, right? I did notice one thing. So when you took that shot, your hair was all over the place. What do you use for your hair, and how was it afterwards?
I just use shampoo and conditioner, and then I let it dry after the shower. Yeah, the Valor student section was chirping about my haircut the entire game, so it felt good to hit that shot. Yeah, it was good. During games, my hair gets all crazy, and at the beginning of the season, I was wearing a headband to kind of keep it in place, but I didn't like it. It was too like tight on my head, so I stopped wearing it. But yeah. What
does Coach Ortiz tell you guys in that situation? I mean, you've got the ball with 2 seconds left before I think they knocked it out of bounds initially, but in a game that you guys really want, you don't necessarily have to have it at this point of the season. But knowing you want a win like that, what is Coach Ortiz telling you guys in the huddle as he's drawing up that play for you?
Yeah. So Coach Ortiz kind of handed it off to Coach Utsi for the play. But, you could kind of get a sense of, we don't necessarily need that game, like you said, but like I said, we've been in a couple close games this season. It was almost deflating when they went up 2 with a couple seconds left, because you knew that game was so important to us. We were 1 game away from being 500 on the year, and no team wants to start the new year at 500. Coach Ortiz, when we got into the huddle, you could see he was a little bit stressed, but he's always calm through the storm. He kind of handed off to Yutzi. Yutzi drew up that play, and coming out of the huddle, we were confident, but you could feel the sense of, is this going to happen again? And I think that, winning one of those close games in dramatic fashion, I think it helped us in our next close game against Overland. And then I think it really helped us in our game against George Washington, just staying composed, even when it gets, when you start to struggle. I know we had a run where we gave up 8 points in a row to George Washington, and the lead was getting cut down, but then Coach Ortiz called timeout. We locked in, we hit a couple threes, and we were right back in control. So I think that winning one of those close games has really helped us, with our composure and staying, in the moment and keeping our bearings.
You play for a program and for a coach that's pretty accustomed to being there in the mix, down toward the end of the end, Final Fours and state championship teams. That's kind of ThunderRidge. I mean, that's part of that program. When you win a game like that, does it give you a sense of where you're at in the state, where you need to be, or where you need to still go, things you need to work on to kind of be there at the end of this tournament?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think, we definitely have spots to grow. That wasn't our best defensive game. We played a lot better defense against Creek, and it kind of fell off during the Valor game. So I think there's a lot of things that we're working on. There's Coach Ortiz right now. We're working on a lot of that in practice, switching up our defensive schemes, and I think really locking in. But of course, a big win like that against a great program in Valor definitely tells you where you're at. We dropped a couple games to really good opponents this season, and I know Valor has beaten some of those opponents, and it kind of restores our confidence. And I think it does give us a good idea of where we're at, but we still have a lot of room to grow.
Well, it's a good thing life just gets easier for you guys as you get Chaparral, Regis Jesuit, Ralston Valley, and Rock Canyon in 4 of the next 5 games, right? What should we expect to see out of you guys over the next couple weeks?
Yeah, we've got a long week to prepare for SHAP, so we're just locking in on practice this week for that. I know Coach is going to put in a strong game plan. And like you said, we got a strong schedule coming up, and it's not going to get any easier come Coliseum time. So I think this is going to be a good test for us, a defining moment, if you say. I think this stretch is going to be really important for us, but I know I trust my guys and I trust our team, and I know we're going to give it our best every time.
I think after these games, you guys should take a trip down to Upswing so you can get take advantage of some of those recovery components that Jermaine's got over there.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, come on down here and see us, Sean, because obviously you can roll through Highlands Ranch with your collar popped a little bit more, because everyone knows anytime you beat Valor in anything, people like you for the week, for sure.
Sean, we appreciate it. We'll let you get back to Coach Ortiz and your teammates as you guys, again, prepare for a heck of a slate. Thanks for jumping on with us, man. Appreciate it. And keep hitting those half-court shots, man. That makes life fun for us.
Good times.
Thank you so much. It was awesome.
All right. That's Sean Morton of ThunderRidge boys basketball. Big win for the Grizzlies. They backed it up.
Big hair.
Big hair.
I think that was just actually a Jermaine segue to taking an unnecessary shot at both of us.
It was necessary. It was necessary shot. It was not necessary.
Unnecessary.
It's the first time in probably 10, 12 episodes. It was like easy. That was easy.
That was pretty easy. It was just set up, teed high for you.
So what you're basically saying is the next time we bring kids on, I got to look at bad hairlines just so we don't take those apparently necessary shots. But that was one game and just really a really fun competitive week of basketball, and we're going to dive into a lot of that, and then I'm going to jump on a soapbox, guys. There are some things I can't say on Jermaine. I'm very curious to get your perspective as an observer, because you don't have kids in high school quite yet. But we're going to dive into more of that as we when we get back on the Colorado Prep Show presented by Upswing. The Benefits Broker team of agents has over 100 years in employee benefits and individual health care needs and is your 24/7 resource for a variety of essential benefits-related information. Clients have enjoyed the ability to connect in person or by phone, while others enjoy the convenience of their online service where they can review the status of their claims, obtain summaries, and download forms including claim forms. Dave and Steve do their homework so you don't have to. They know the market by distinguishing the best products from the merely adequate. Give them a call at 877-545-4840 or visit them online at benefitsbroker.com.
Yo, these KDs are fire.
KD, you work here?
Whatever, kid.
Take notes.
Every shoe for every athlete, only at Dick's.
Whoever said work smarter, not harder, didn't realize you could do both.
Welcome back to the Colorado Prep Show presented by Upswing. Dan Mormon, Doug Ottewell, Jermaine Stafford, as always, guys. We adjusted things a little bit just so we could get Sean on the program and out of here and back to practice. But normally we'd go down the interesting things that we saw over the last week in terms of high school basketball, or high school sports, I should say, because we're not a basketball only or football only or anything only show. So as opposed to doing that, in segment one, we're just going to go into segment two. But it was quite a week just in terms of big results. A couple of, I think, perceived upsets, even if maybe talent-wise things happened the way that they should have. And we're going to start off with girls basketball, Jermaine. I mean, I know last week you gave us a little bit of grief ahead of the show, wondering if we were going to talk any girls hoops. Of course we are. We always will. But so we'll lead off with the girls out of respect for you. The first one that jumped out in my mind, and it's just they always do a great job of tagging us and making us aware, but Broomfield with a 64-59 win over Valor on Saturday. Reese Gilpatrick had 21 points and 9 rebounds for Broomfield. That's another one of those teams, and Doug, we chatted about it a week ago. Broomfield's up there right now in the selection seeding index, and we're not sure how those are going to hold, in 4 weeks, but how big of a win is this for the Broomfield Eagles?
Well, it's really big. I mean, you think about the consistency and quality of the Valor program over the past, call it 5, 6, maybe 7 years. To beat a team like that says that you're there, you're in the mix. So, Reese Gilpatrick showing up that big, 21 points. I mean, that's a big performance against, one of the state's, quote unquote juggernauts. So I think it says everything about what Broomfield is and can be going down the stretch.
Yep. And then we shift right over to Aurora. Cherokee Trail with a 48-44 win over Erie on Friday night. And that's after they beat Legend by 10 earlier. So, they did some work in Parker, and then but they went up to Erie and got another big win. Elia Brodus is averaging about 16.8 points per game for the Cougars. And then some freshman girl whose name I've heard of somewhere, Chloe Kane, is sitting right there at 16.7. Jermaine, you've been bragging about this girl now to us for a couple of weeks, but as we start seeing these results and these wins and see what this girl is made of, I mean, how long can she stay under the radar if she is under the radar right now?
Yeah, well, I don't think she's under any radar. She may be under our radar here in Colorado, but she's definitely not nationally. I mean, she's receiving Division I offers as we speak every day, right? So she is definitely one of those who's been out for a couple of years now. It's amazing how, youth basketball is kind of aligns the same way you see European soccer, right? In a sense where youth girls basketball, a lot of development happens when they go to these camps and they play these tournaments when they're coming up, and they're getting rated, and development is rated in regards to how they can play, not just how good they look, but how they can play. And she's had that for a couple of years now. And you can see, if you say her name around the basketball world, people know and they understand and they've seen her play. They can't believe her age. You know, when you watch her on the court, you can't believe she is that age. So it's wonderful to see it, because I know what we see here at Upswing is just her hard work off the court. And I'm not just talking about sprints and jumps and strength. I'm talking about the recovery, right? You guys alluded to it all the time about coming down and seeing some recovery. To see her dedication to come here and do the recovery and have that regimen of that tells you she's doing the things that can't be scored or aren't talked about. And she has the support system of her, you know, her family to have her here and dropping her off at 8:30 and staying to 9:30 to get recovery coming off of those games. That's huge. That's a unique quality that takes you to being an elite basketball player. But yeah, that team as a whole, I mean, they are definitely, you know, moving along in the right place, just as well as Broomfield. And I look at Broomfield's victory over Valor as status quo. And I mean that in a great way. Nothing against the Valor team, but that's what that team should be doing, right? It's one of those things, those wins you just need to have when you have a star like that at Broomfield, regardless of what they've been before. You know, Valor, you are that team now as a coach and in a program. It's not you should rate yourself off for what someone used to be in regards to versus what you are now.
Yep. And she's going to make things really, really fun for us to track. Chloe Kane is. So, I think Cherokee Trail's still sitting at 1 in the selection seating index. Room up there. So you're seeing a couple of powerhouses really, you know, trying to take a foothold there. Another one, this one is maybe a little unexpected in my sense, but Pine Creek is still looking very, very good, despite the fact that they lost some big time contributors from last year's team. They got a 50-41 win over Air Academy. Air Academy may be a little bit of a step back. I think that they were the number 1 seed in the 5A tournament last year. They still have Kinley Asp, who went for 19 points in that loss, but that's a very significant win for the Eagles. Just from the standpoint of being able to maintain that momentum. I know their head coach, Janine Jubik, has been, you know, doing everything she can to get that team to the Coliseum. They finally got there last year. They won a game at the Coliseum. They, you know, felt like they were on top of the world. I think they ran into that buzzsaw of a Grandview team that ends up winning state. But I'm really curious to see just how much Pine Creek has. I'm going to have to get up north sooner than later to check out those Eagles. And then the other thing, guys, like we got to keep our eye over in the Western Slope there, because Roaring Fork and 4A, that's a team that has jumped out to a solid start to the season. They remain undefeated. They got big league wins over North Fork and Grand Valley to stay unbeaten last week. So, you know, nothing I want to touch too much on yet, but I think it's worth keeping an eye on the Rams as we get a little bit more into league play and a little bit deeper into the season. On the boys' side, we touched on Valor, ThunderRidge. We touched on the fact that the Grizzlies turned around and got another win over George Washington, 63-56. And Doug, I can't remember if that was one that you and I had texted about, that was a significant result, at least in our mind, especially with what George has been doing early in the year.
Well, I think it was a big test for both teams, because both teams have been playing well. George Washington looks like that team, and we talked about it last week, that's kind of going to potentially emerge from the DPS. They've got scorers, they've got athletes on the defensive side. I don't think by any means they're going away. And that was a close game. You know, a 7-point game in a high school game probably really kind of boils down to end of the game possessions and free throws more than anything. So those two teams are kind of neck and neck in my eyes still.
And Jermaine, when you start seeing these DPS teams, I mean, even with George coming off that loss, they have a big one, and Doug and I are going to talk more about that later coming up with Denver East. But when you start to see the whole of the DPS kind of take a step up, how much does it make things in that Denver metro area, knowing what kind of basketball you're going to see out of those teams?
Well, it's motivating, right? It's motivating for a lot of those kids to stay in those areas. And what I mean by stay in those areas, those schools, and attend those schools in those areas. Let's be realistic. I mean, Doug, you've seen it through Chassa for years. Kids go to different schools and not the schools that are in the neighborhood and move around. Families do. And it's unique to see when you have winning programs in any sport, definitely DPS, because academically, I believe DPS stands really tall. At times, kids leave there to go play better football in different areas, or they go to, school where they can attend to pay to go to those schools and they transfer out. So, yeah, it's very unique. We all know this between George Washington and East. I mean, that is a true basketball histories, right? You have those. So to see those teams turn that entire district around is very motivating. I mean, just look what's happening in the 6A in general. I mean, if you look at the top of the list, you think you're looking back at a football list, right? Because you have Ralston Valley and Arvada West sitting up there at 1 and 2, this week. That's powerful for that district and for that division and conference to have those two teams sitting 1 and 2. It could be the same thing for George, and you start to look at the others around the DPS.
Yep. A couple more I want to touch on. I mean, Dylan Orocho at Harrison scores 21 points as Harrison gets a 70-69 win over Lewis Palmer, guys. That definitely raised some eyebrows in my neck of the woods. Harrison also won the Superintendent's Cup over the weekend. They beat their district rival Sierra. So the Panthers appear to be rolling. Out there in the Flatlands, we had the Doug Ottawell Bowl on the hardwood as Lyman beat Genoa Hugo 63-27. Dougie, you threw a note in here that you were not in attendance, which
I have been to that game many times. I was not there this year. This is rumor and should not be taken for fact, but the old story about why Hugo and Lyman traditionally do not like each other in an athletic sense goes back. I want to say it was sometime in the 50s, maybe the 60s, but the local ranchers and farmers used to bet on the games. And historically speaking, Lyman has been a superior program. So one game, I believe the coach of Hugo, and I don't know who it was at that point, caught wind of some big bets taking place. So rather than playing the game out and going toe to toe and probably losing to Lyman by a decent amount, the Hugo Pirates stalled for essentially 4 quarters in what I can only imagine to be condensing the spread. So in other words, I think the Pirates covered, and it caused some great uproar in those communities. Probably caused some people to lose some significant bets. You bet your crop on this kind of game, and then the team that's supposed to lose stalls for 4 quarters. I imagine there was some bad blood there. Supposedly, that's the story of why that rivalry is. There's a little bit of distaste. Yeah, I don't want to necessarily say hate because it's far removed now, but there's some history there for sure.
Talking about high school sports betting in terms of Genoa, in terms of Hugo and Lyman was not on my bingo card for today, fellas. So,
well, I was in Las Vegas this last weekend, and neither school
gambling's on your mind.
Neither school popped up on the big board in the sports book, so I think we're clear.
Are we talking about Hoosiers? Are we? It sounds like this show Hoosiers. We're talking.
This
about
is a lot like the old gym at Hugo is a lot like Hoosiers. There's a stage on one side. Yeah.
We are on the record that we do not condone the betting of high school sporting events. I think that's probably safe.
I think there's a help organization if you're doing that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, and rivalries are created for that reason. And oh man, that's a little bit of
in the 50s, Dan. I didn't say last week.
They strike me as a place that's very, very much built on tradition. So. Well, we do not condone any act. If that were a thing, then I would assume it is probably a terrible segue. But Banning Lewis would have certainly covered whatever spread they had over Vanguard. They get a 75-29 win. The reason that I have this because I always want to talk about close competitive games. Vanguard and Banning Lewis are two teams. They're in the same league in the Tri-Peaks, and they're always in that 3A landscape. There are teams that in theory should be playing at DU the last weekend of the season. To see that wide of a margin of victory was just outright stunning. Matthew LeBron, we had Wes McKenzie on, I think it was right before winter break, guys. And, he was glowing about Matthew LeBron, his star guard. He had 23 points. And then the thing that really got my attention was just that Banning Lewis owned the boards. They pulled down 52 rebounds through the course of that game. And at times it sounded like Vanguard was shot goes up and everyone on the inside was clearing out for them to try and get some fast break looks, which is a way that they've traditionally played basketball. So very curious to see how both those teams respond. I know Banning Lewis, they host my guys this week, Doug. So I'm sure I'll be out there to check out that one as Manitou Springs heads out a little east of Colorado Springs. And then, how does Vanguard bounce back from a win like that? I do want to point out some hockey. We do have some top teams in the 5A seeding index. Valor and Cherry Creek, a couple of teams that were right there in the mix last year. Valor gets a 5-1 win. Coach Guaz looks to have his guys rolling, very much like usual. There's a big game in 4A tomorrow night. Colorado Academy taking on Pine Creek. Those guys are both in the top 5 of the 4A seeding index. And with that, I want to dive into. I attended a basketball game over the weekend, and I'm very curious to get your guys' stance on this. And I feel like this is always the stuff where Danny Bailey's going to come back and say, I liked your show because you guys talked about things like this today. So, Danny, this is partially your fault. But I'm standing next to a parent who it felt like this guy woke up with the intention of being the loudest guy in a high school gym. And that in itself isn't anything to write home about. But when you're yelling at a kid from the other team, when you've made up a nickname that maybe there's no swear words, maybe there's nothing like overly derogatory, but when you have to scream it at a kid for, 32 minutes of game time, that's where I start to get a little uneasy. And then, he had no problem cussing or screaming derogatory things toward the officials. Like, that's the other part. It was to the point where even like, if I was an administrator, I would have been embarrassed that parent was in my building. I would have removed him from the building. I know administrators who would have removed him from the building. But guys, at what point, from a parent perspective, I did find out this guy was a parent, and I found out that he has been banned from other schools in the area. But when do you cross a line? Like, at what point, what are just some do's and don'ts for parent behavior in high school stands?
Well, I can tell you, I've been a part of, both. I've been a part of fans as well as parents and athletes when it comes to high school sports, and being front lines in the different sports, track and field meets, or football game or hockey game. I can remember you spoke, and this is nothing against those two programs, but you talk about Cherry Creek and Valor hockey. Years back, that game wouldn't be cupcakes and cotton candy at the end of those games with their student body. So let's be realistic about it. We see this in a professional level. So if we're seeing these things happen at professional level, that means the nurture has been created for those who attend these games in a younger, divisions, right? In the youth high school, and they get to college, they can scream. In the pros, guys are kind of joked about that they are hecklers. And we see it every other night in NBA. Someone's being escorted out. In my famed Michigan State University, I watched Tom Izzo help them remove a former Spartan player from the college basketball game just last week, who was, speaking derogatory towards a referee. So these things in sports, there's a line that needs to be, drawn in the sand. However, it needs to be literature and documents that if anyone attends a game, parents, that administrators have the right to remove anyone at any time, the same way they would remove you and I if we were writing something derogatory. We were saying something on this show that didn't represent youth in a certain way. Creating a nickname, for kids during the game, it's just not cool. You heard our young man from ThunderRidge just speak about how they were picking with his hair, and they had a hairdo named for him during the game, right?
And in some ways, that's in good fun between students, right?
That's totally different. That's what I mean.
Right.
That's a part of the game. However, if it is a parent and another coach or some adults, no, that's not what we should have in high school sports, especially with CHASA. And this is not a knock on CHASA, but CHASA has always been known to have that hard fist when it comes to certain things. I truly believe it's time for them to do that when it comes to these sporting events as well, and to remove. And I'm not saying they don't. I'm not at every sporting event. I don't know how it goes, but I have been in close contact with a couple parents at football games at stadiums that there's no way they should have made it to the second quarter. right? And no one was doing anything because they didn't seem like they could be heard, across the field or on the field by the kids. But the community could hear these parents make those conversations and create those conversations. Just not worth the space at a high school athletic competition.
Doug, your dad was the commissioner of CHSAA for a while, and I think one real important distinction here is a regular season game, that's on the school. When you are at a place like the Denver Coliseum or DU or something like that, where it's a CHSAA sanctioned event, where it's, a state tournament and CHSAA is the host entity, then it probably falls a little bit on them, although the schools should be helping administrate that. But Doug, I mean, how many times have you heard, whether it's stories from your dad or just things that you've heard while sitting in various gyms, arenas, whatever, parents that just like that they've definitively crossed a line?
Well, I think the thing is, and I do remember, my dad's office at the time over various points doing, whether it was coaches and administrators kind of education programs or surveys to kind of say, hey, what does this impact? What does this mean to a kid? And what I remember the most about that is that, I don't think a parent yelling, calling a kid names or whatever inside of a game really does much to hurt that kid. I mean, you heard it earlier in the show, somebody's making fun of my hair. Oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to hit the game winner. And that doesn't bother me. These kids are confident. They have high self-esteem. I actually don't think that it does much to those kids. But what I remember really hearing was that the biggest downfall of a parent acting like that is that it embarrasses their own kids. And that, I think, is very harmful. There's a big difference between being supportive of your kid and his school or her school and being belittling to opponents, riding the officials to a point where it's loud and obnoxious. The biggest thing there is that if your kid's on the court and you're the one acting like that, that hurts them. It doesn't hurt many other people. It just embarrasses you as a child of your parent. And that's not a position that anyone ever wants to be in, to be embarrassed of their parent. Parents are supposed to be looked up to. Parents are supposed to set examples. So when your parent is the one that's, making it about them, that's where I think is the most harmful. I really, hey, look, if you want to go yell and scream at an NBA game and embarrass yourself and, have one too many beers, that's on you. And if you get taken out, whatever, but no one ever in a crowd looks at the guy that's yelling and screaming and says, well, that guy, he's honest. That's the guy I want to be like. No one says that. And especially if that's your dad, you want to run and hide. You don't want to, you're not happy that your dad's, getting under the other team's skin. You're embarrassed by that.
Right. And I think maybe one problem that I really have with this is the gym I was watching in it's small. So one, you can hear the guy from regardless of where you're standing. I just happen to be, 4 bodies away from him. But I kind of go on this old adage of, if you don't like it, if someone would say something to your kid, then why on earth do you feel like you get to say something to someone else's?
Well, I think if we all operated under the golden rule in any walk of life, we'd all be better off. But for some reason, people have this elevated sense of the importance of sports. And I think that's where that kind of comes into play. It's like sports has a different rule because it has a different place or different hierarchy, and it shouldn't. You're absolutely right. You should, you wouldn't want someone to do that to your kid or a kid on your kid's team. So why are you doing it?
Right. And we've seen it this weekend as well, right? Think about, and I go back to my original point, is nurture. This is happening. People are doing it more and more every day. I mean, we've seen it this weekend. I mean, this blew my mind because I actually know a couple of individuals on the Chicago Bears, and this being a Christian, that one athlete on the Chicago Bears, he was not happy with his head coach being heard using, derogatory words towards the Packers at the end in their locker room, right at the end, where it's a national story today because it embarrassed the Chicago Bears, right? And like you're saying, Doug, it's embarrassing the players on that team that don't want to live that and feel like that's what's best, right? Because in sports, we can, people listen to these locker rooms. It's got this big win, it's great, but we're going to say, the Packers, that to the Packers. It doesn't make sense. But our kids, other parents are watching, right? And they're learning, they're thinking they can go do this. They can be this way. This is a part of sport. Sport eliminates all those, integrity lines that we should have when it comes to being attending or being a part of.
Yeah. And I think, and there's always like a little bit of the emotional buy-in, like in the moment, right? Like, this wouldn't be my style, but I would understand if the dad was going along with the student section and chanting air ball if the kid, put up a shot and it didn't hit anything. Not my cup of tea, but if you want to act like the kids, then go ahead and act like the kids. But when you get to a point where, the behavior that he's engaging in is the behavior when texting with another coach that got him banned from another district. Like, if you're the administrator of that school, how have you not stepped in and told him, look, man, you already can't go to a road game over here to watch your kid play. Don't make me remove you.
In defense of administrators, I think, and every case is different. So this is very much of a blanket statement, but I do think that there's a healthy fear of litigation, of retribution that you don't want to have to deal with. Because that's just the society we live in. We're an overly litigious society. And if someone removes you from a game, you feel you have the right to be watching your kid, it turns into a giant mess. I'm not saying they should or shouldn't. I'm just saying it's probably not as simple as someone turning a blind eye.
Well, and where I think that gets really tricky, because there's probably a deeper conversation that we could dive into. But, when I think about some of the verbal abuse that's being handed out to officials, and then you hear, Chassa, it won't be shy about telling you there's an official shortage in the state, and their plan is to just pay them more. And that's not always like the problem that needs to be solved. I mean, it might help make things a little bit easier initially, but if I was a high school basketball official, and I've wanted to go down the road of us documenting the process and actually doing it, and I think that would be a really fun thing to do. But if I'm a high school basketball official, I don't know how long I don't know how much it's worth it for me to go take that kind of verbal abuse for, 32 minutes of regulation as that's going on. So,
well, I can tell you this, my dad was an official pretty much his entire professional life. And as a kid growing up, I'd tag along and, I'd get plunked in the bleachers and get to watch a JV game and then a varsity game. And I heard it every single game he ever officiated, the griping, the bad calls, the name calling, the whatever. And he always wanted me to become an official. Why would I ever want to do that? There's absolutely no experience in my life that led me.
You're the most hated person in the building at that point.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't understand why you do it. I certainly don't understand why I would want to do it.
And again, and we started in on parents, but I will say the best officials that I've ever talked to are the guys who can basically cancel that out. They have a really good, there's a really good disconnect between them and what they hear in the stands, and they don't let it bother them. But it's just one of those things. And I always feel kind of like I'm standing up on that soapbox and preaching, but at some point, and I was going back and forth with a guy on Twitter, like, you've lost sight of the goal here. If you are dad who has to call an opposing 17-year-old player a name the entire time to make yourself feel better about the fact that your team is not winning this game. But
yeah, I mean, I think we can all agree on that. There are certain people that have that that may not have that perspective, and I would feel fine saying they need to get that perspective.
Jermaine, any closing thoughts on that, or you just want to tell us what's great about Upswing so Doug and I can preview the week ahead?
Well, I think we can leave that and let's get positive and talk about what is positively happening here at Upswing for the weekend. We are very excited to have our first annual Dr. Martin Luther King Sprint Fest. Will be here on Sunday. It is a youth, track meet for kids 12 and under. And obviously you've heard me talk a lot about that. That's what drove us to have it this year. Just a place where, little people can come run, right? We want to have them have some competition. So we're going to have Sprint Fest. It's going to be some sprinting, some jumping. Who's the fastest? Who can jump the highest? The kids that get 50 meters, racing. They don't have to be track athlete. If you have some kids, just show up and we'll put you in a race and get you timed and have some vertical testing. Be a great event. Rolling Smoke next door is going to be one of the vendors giving out, their wonderful barbecue next door. So yeah, it's going to be a great weekend in the honor, of an individual that coming to the segue of what we were talking about, of great men. It's going to be an honor to have a event in his name, and having Dr. Martin Luther King on Sunday with his holiday coming up. So it's everything that we talk about and we do here, our mentorship in creating, a servitude and being a great individuals every day of our lives. So we're very excited about that this weekend.
Right. What's the age limit? You gotta. Will I get in under the bar, or is there an age limit
for all kids under 60?
Yeah, you might get under the bar. You won't jump above the bar. I
won't jump over the bar. I certainly won't raise the bar. I can promise that.
You can raise the bar if you come volunteer this weekend, right? We need all the help we can get. So if you like,
well, you have Rolling Smoke. That sounds like a pretty good trade-off.
Yeah, exactly. You can come here and watch some kids run and shake some hands and see the future, athletes that we all know to become in high school. They'll start here this weekend. So come check us out.
Very cool. Very cool.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Jermaine. Doug and I are going to wrap up the show, but as always, man, we appreciate your time. Keep doing great things up there, and we'll talk to you next week.
Take it easy, guys. See you soon.
See you, Jermaine.
We wrapped up the interesting slate of games from last week, but Doug, I texted you earlier today. We've got a heck of a slate coming up this week, so you and I are going to talk more on that right on the other side of the break. This is the Colorado Prep Show presented by Upswing.
When I go to court, these aren't my clients. These are my friends. These are people that I believe in, and they have one shot, just one shot for justice. If they've come to me and we've gotten to trial, their life has been turned upside down in some awful way, and I am their only hope. I need to be their champion, to quote Prince Oberyn from Game of Thrones. They need someone in this trial by combat that can fight for them. I'm all they have. So if I haven't put the time in, if I haven't trained, if I haven't humbly looked in the mirror and thought about ways I can be better, and I don't present my best self in court, then I failed them. And that's what motivates me as a trial lawyer, because when this is over, that client goes home. And if I haven't done my best for him, I haven't been his champion, then I've failed.
This is Tim Anderson of Gordon Insurance, and we are proud to support all of our area athletes. With offices in Lyman, Callahan, Flagler, Sterling, and Kit Carson, we offer all types of insurance, including home, auto, commercial, farm, crop, life, bonds, and workman's compensation. We are independent and thus can offer you multiple choices of companies, not just one. Call or visit the office near you, and one of our agents can take care of you. See all of our contact information by going to www.gordonins.com or call me at 719-740-1361.
There are those who say the modern world has made us lose touch with places like this. We say, that depends on what you're driving.
Welcome back into the Colorado Prep Show presented by Upswing. Dan Moorman, Doug Ottewell. Dougie, as we look ahead to the interesting slate, we just saw the Ford ad where it said, go off-road. Let's look at this road ahead, courtesy of our friends from Ford. But we'll start with boys. We recapped everything starting with the girls. One that's close to my neck of the woods. We talked a little bit about Rampart last week. The Rams take on Cheyenne Mountain. It'll be a big test for both teams. I think they're both sitting at one loss on the year. Rampart senior heavy. Wyatt Kirch is averaging about 16.6 points per game. Isaiah Malesio, I think, is at 14.1. Those are your leaders offensively for the Rams. For Cheyenne Mountain, it's junior Alex Treglia. We're bad at this, Dougie, because we're writers. I don't know how to. we as long as we spell it right, that's all that matters to us. He leads all scorers in that game with 21.1 points per game. Senior James DeLasso has 10.3 points per game, but also 4 steals. So he's kind of like that defensive spark for them. We chatted with Eagle Crest coach Jarris Crapshaw last week. They've got a big one against Mountain Vista. It was Eagle Crest who edged the Golden Eagles in the regular season last year. And then, of course, Eagle Crest went on to win the 6A state championship. So I would like to see if Brian Wood can kind of flip that script. What I didn't want to, this is a little bit of a squirrel moment. I wanted to talk about this a little bit last week when we had Jarris, but he talked about how the pressure was off of him when he won that state championship. That was something that was hanging over his head. I feel like there's a really good crop of coaches at that 6A level where they all kind of fit that bill. Like they've had teams that are good enough. I would put Brian Wood in there since he took over for Bob. Kent Grahams at Rock Canyon, I think, would be another one of those guys. So I always like it when those coaches get together and their teams are playing against each other. I don't know if that's anything that jumps out at you.
Well, the talent level at both of those schools is always above par, I mean, and those programs have built kids up from the time they're in, grade school, junior high. So by the time they get there, not only are you going to watch great players, but, to see, Coach Crapshaw and Brian Wood go at it head to head, you're watching 2 coaching legends. I mean, that's kind of the new.
Hey, young, are they old enough for you to call them legends?
They will. I mean, this is my point. You're watching Rudy Carey and Dick Cotty kind of in their prime. I mean, these are guys that are picking up that torch. Yeah, they're a long way away from having that many wins. On the flip side, those 2 programs, and it's hard to be, to amass that many wins at that level, especially, in their respective conferences, because there's some really, really good competition year in, year out. So I think it's, maybe you have to adjust your definition a little bit. But Rudy Carey did the same thing in the Denver Prep League when it was at its finest. Dick Cotty did the same thing, against the other parochial schools, kind of in their heyday. So I think it's fun to watch these kind of coaches go at it and see what their programs do year in, year out. And then when they get to go head to head, it's even more of a treat.
Yeah, we talked about Eagle Crest Big 3, Damari Mans Davis, Reese Brown, and Clayton Kalimba last week with Jarris. Mountain Vista, their big man, Ollie Junker, is maybe one of my favorite kids to watch just because he's a little bit more, I mean, he can shoot the ball. He can spot up and shoot it if he needs to, but they want to get the ball on the block and they want to let him muscle his way to the hoop. And that's always just fun for me to watch. A quick note, Bob Wood, the old coach, Brian's dad down at Mountain Vista.
Senior, yeah.
Yeah, and he was at Buena Vista back when when I was in high school at Manitou. So we've known the Woods for a while, but it was announced that Bob will be inducted into the Chaska Hall of Fame this year. So congratulations to Bob Wood. Doug, looks like you've got some DPS action that you're keeping an eye on.
Yeah, GW and East would be a game that I probably, over the course of my life, I've probably seen at least a dozen times, just because at one point that was kind of a, must-see matchup year in, year out. The DPS has gone through some different transitions, and maybe that matchup isn't quite what it was, say, in the 90s or in the 80s. However, both of these teams look like they're kind of, to use their sponsor, they're on the upswing. Particularly the GW, Jeremiah Trim scored his 1,000th point. That's a major milestone for any high school basketball player. So you've got a scorer there. He's averaging 16.8 a game this year. East has a sophomore, Noah Adkins. It's averaging almost 20. And then Dayson Collier, a name that we're familiar with Denver East and also the University of Colorado. He's averaging 18.8 as a sophomore. He's leading East along with Lincoln Lemieux 13-6 a game. So, right there on Denver East, they got 3 kids that are averaging, almost more than 14 points a game, close to 20 for 2 of them. So they got some firepower. And then, you get to go up and kind of give yourself a test against GW, who at this point is the perceived better team, the best team, I would say, in the DPS at the moment.
Yeah. And Collier, of course, I think he's the cousin of Dom Collier. So that's the word I got out of East today. And then you also have your eye on Jeffco League.
Yeah, Ralston Valley and Chatfield, not 2 teams that we would typically expect to be talking about this time of year, especially coming out of the Jeffco. I mean, both teams are playing really well. Ralston Valley, Caden Brakita, he's averaging 19 points a game. Zeke Andrews, who we know from football fame, that's a big kid. I mean, I can remember we were doing the Raising Cane show, and he walked in, and you know who it is, but there's always this sort of that realization of like, is this your defensive end? Is this your tight end? I mean, he is a big kid, occupy a lot of space in the middle. He's not a huge scorer, but he's averaging 11.4. He barely ever misses. I'm assuming he's getting a lot of shots right at the rim. But the other thing about Zeke Andrews is that there's not many people that are going to be going in the lane, just with easy, uncontested shots with a kid like that standing there. And then you got Chatfield, Nolan Fedderson. He's a player to be watching. He's another one of the young kids. We'll be watching him for another 3 years. He's averaging 21. I'm always impressed when you have a freshman or a sophomore that's averaging, 20 points a game. I mean, that's a kid to keep an eye on. So, those 2 schools are playing great basketball. Probably not schools that were on everyone's radar right off the bat, but they sure are now. So the fact that they get a matchup this week, that's another great opportunity to see a couple of great teams.
Yep. Going down to the smaller ranks, I'm looking at Windsor Charter Academy versus Golden View Classical Academy, a couple of charter schools. Windsor has a solid 1-2 punch in Dayton Long and Andrew Shams. They combined to average, about 42 points per game between the 2 of them. So good group, good 1-2 punch right there. And then for Golden View, Jacob Walker he's been a good overall player this year. About 17 points, 6 rebounds, and nearly 4 assists per game. So he can score, he can rebound, and he can find open shooters. That should make for a fun matchup. We shift over to girls, and you still have your eye on Jeffco.
Yeah, stick over there on the west side of town. Columbine and A-West are going to go at it. Jordan Washington for Columbine averaging close to 15. Courtney Brock close to 14. Taylor Spears at 13 points a game. I mean, that's a pretty balanced attack for a girls team that's undefeated. And then they're going up against another undefeated team in A-West. Emerson Drake is averaging 14-2. She's another sophomore, another one of those young kids to keep an eye on. That's, like I said, it's always impressive when you're an underclassman. You come in, you dominate, and you score a lot of points. Macy Ferguson, 13.3 points a game for Arvada West. So, those 2 kids are great players for the Wildcats. Ferguson, especially, probably one of the better 3-point shooters in the state. So that's a matchup that's, it's going to send somebody onto a continued undefeated streak, and then someone's going to get their first loss. So that's always exciting when you have that, this deep in the season.
Yeah, out west, Buena Vista heads to Sanford, not Stanford. That would be a bad result. Buena Vista heads to Sanford on Tuesday. One of the few remaining non-league games left for each of these teams. Buena Vista has Daisy Lubers, who's averaging 11.6 a game. Liz Molitor has 10.9. Tough stretch for the Demons, because after this they have CSCS and then Monta Vista, who are both just playing really, really good basketball at this time of year. You would expect it from CSCS. That's always a well-coached program, plays tough. Sanford has just been an offensive machine this year, outscoring their opponents 437 to 201 this year. I'm going to look north up to the St. Vrain Valley School District. Meade and Frederick, a massive league and district rivalry game. Meade actually beat the Golden Eagles in the Grade 8 last year at the Coliseum. We were there for that game, Dougie, and that got the Mavericks into the Final Four. I know Mike Ward, their head coach, helped the boys golf team win a state championship in the fall. So I'm wondering if Mike is now feeling that itch that he's got to get another state title for himself. He's got the girls to do it. Maddie Clark, she was a good sophomore last year. She's a better junior this year. She's going for about 17.4 a game. Elena Gomez is another steady hand. She has about 13.3 points per game. Frederick is in the midst of a little bit of a tough stretch. They lost 3 out of 4 at one point. I think a win over Meade goes a long way for them for the backstretch of the season. May Torres is their leader on offense. She leads the Golden Eagles with 11.7 points per game. And then back east, when we go to the Plains, Dougie, I look at you.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm talking about a football preview here because Stratton is going to go to Marino. Both teams are in their top 10. I mean, I think we could make that sentence when we were talking about football in the fall.
It may not matter the sport. Both teams are probably just going to be in the top 10.
It's a great point, honestly. I mean, when you see small schools good in one sport, there's a better than average probability they're going to be good in other sports, just because that's a focus, that's a program, and I think you see that with both of those schools, obviously in Stratton and Marino. Marino, probably at least from the early returns, seems like they're the best 2A team in the state. They haven't won a game by fewer than 18 points all season, so they can obviously score. They obviously have a great defense. So I think this becomes a tough matchup for Holyoke, for Stratton, as Stratton's only loss on the season was to Holyoke. But yeah, they're going to be tested. I think Marino's is like you said, they're the team to beat as of right now. So Stratton will have something to say about that, and we'll get a better sense of that 2A level once we see these two teams meet.
Yeah, that should be a fun one. So that's what we have on the slate. I mean, there are always going to be games every night. Doug, I'm going to walk 4 blocks south of my house tonight so I can watch a little bit of Pine Creek and Palmer. Go say what's up to our buddy Eric Trujillo, of course, a friend of the program who helped us out with some Reggie Jackson gear a couple years ago for the cover of Mile High Sports Magazine.
That's right.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go hang with Eric a little bit, but before we go, I do want to give it a shout out to our letter winners over the last week. We didn't talk a lot of wrestling, so I want to make sure we give our kudos to some wrestlers who had big weekends. Zach Benson from Gunnison went undefeated at the Mel Smith Invite. That's a big tournament in Florence for small schools. That is actually like the regular season wrestling tournament. So to go undefeated and come out of there with what is now a 25-0 record, big boost for that young man as he looks to go for a state title. For girls wrestling, Shiley Tuzon from Grand Junction Central, she went 3-0 at the Tournament of Champions in Utah. They went a little west to find some action this year. She remains undefeated, and for anyone who wants to check out the girls wrestling rankings at coloradopreps.com, courtesy of our friend Tom Blair of Inside Colorado Wrestling, the Warriors are the #1 team in 5A. And then I meant to change this. I meant to signal this for you, Dougie, but I don't want to put you on the spot. But Rex Burstein from Colorado Academy Hockey, he recorded another hat trick as the Mustangs rolled to a win over Mullen, an 8-0 win over Mullen on Thursday. Full photo gallery can be found at coloradopreps.com. But Rex is one of the best hockey players in the state. He's having a heck of a year. The Colorado Academy Mustangs are rolling. They're a top 3 team in 4A. So, other than that, it's a really big week across the entire Mile High Sports Network. Those Denver Broncos, they're going to be back in action after being the only AFC team to sit on the sofa and watch football this week, Doug. They'll host the Buffalo Bills in the AFC divisional round on Saturday. If you need to stay up to date with all the Broncos happening, go find Orange Crush by Cody Rourke. Check out Good Morning Broncos every morning with Cody Rourke. You can find those right here on the Mile High Sports YouTube channel. Then, of course, we have the Denver Broncos podcast with Troy Rank. Doug, I know you can't get enough of Ryan Blackburn, especially in trying to track what these Nuggets are doing every single game without Nikola Jokic. He will continue to keep Nuggets fans informed as we await the return of Cam Johnson, Jonas Valanciunas, and, of course, Nikola Jokic. You can find Pickaxe and Roll right here on the Mile High Sports YouTube channel. And then, yeah, Doug, you're out next week. So you're just going to be consuming all the YouTube channel content as to stay informed as to what's going on here.
That's right. I won't be far out of touch. I'm just not able to be on the show next week, but It might just be because I haven't been sent enough gear. I'm waiting to, stockpile my set of gear, so I'll return in 2 weeks.
No, that's and while you're gone, you'll be locked into everything Mile High Sports in Colorado preps to stay up to date with what's happening.
Absolutely.
In your sports.
Out of sight, not out of touch, for sure.
Never out of mind. So, thanks, Dougie. We want to thank Sean Morton, ThunderRidge boys basketball. Great interview. We'll get some clips cut up of that and post it out on our socials. I know Danny Bailey, our guy behind the scenes, is always great at doing that. Jermaine Stafford from Upswing, thanks to him. And yeah, let's dive into the marathon of winter sports here in Colorado. So
it's on, and it's not going to stop until state champs are crowned in basketball. So now's the time.
And we're about 6 weeks away from things really getting going with state tournaments. So for Doug Ottewell, Jermaine Stafford, Danny Bailey, this is the Colorado Prep Show presented by Upswing.